guys, welcome to another episode of the Whiskey Diaries. I'm your host Martin Lang. We're here at Diurachs, and today we're going to be talking about Jura. Jura is a very unique island south of Islay in the Hebrides in Scotland. The population is about 200 people, and this distillery was created in 1810 by the Campbells. He was the Laird of Jura at the time. And they produce a pretty unique whiskey, everybody will say. The reason why is because, like many distilleries around Scotland, they open and they close, they got mothballed, they got redone. But around 1960s, one of the most prominent people in the island believed that they were losing a lot of population, so they decided to rebuild the whole distillery just to keep population in there. In the 60s as well, one of the main clients from Jura was just a general whiskey provider that they, at the time in the 60s, like many other whiskies they were producing, they were requiring a very soft, easy drinking whiskey. The reason why I'm explaining this is because even Jura has one of the biggest peat bogs in the whole of Scotland. They don't use a lot of peat until recently, and this was around the 2010s they started using peat. And the reason being is in the 1960s, whiskey demand and whiskey in general was non-peated. It was a soft style of whiskey, all used for blends and everything like that. It wasn't until the 90s and the early 2000s when the whiskey boom started going that people really started liking the peat. Now, a very interesting fact about the peat from Jura that is different to, let's just say, Islay, is that it has, during summer times, it has like a little moss that it goes completely green. So this gives the whiskey or the smoke on the whiskey just a softer note. It's more like a heathery, more like honey style. So they have a few whiskies at the core range. Recently they added another 3. We're going to go one by one, but these are my favorites. So the origin is just a standard 10-year-old aged in American oak. The second one, and they all have the stories. This is what I like about Jura, is the fact that because they're in an island and there's only like 200 people populations, they have a rich history of just building prophecies and superstitions. Now the second one is Diurachs' own. Diurach is what is Gaelic for Jura, is basically the Jura's population, and for what I heard, the 16-year-old is what all the people in Jura drink, and the symbol is actually the Diurachs. The Diurachs tribe symbol, basically, the Jura symbol. So that's the island, that's the 16-year-old. Another interesting fact about this one is that it gets 14-year-old in American oak and then an extra 2 years old in Amoroso sherry. Amoroso sherry is also used on the some of the Talisker, the distillers editions as well. It's just a style of sherry. But the interesting fact about this as well is that Jura is so remote that just getting sherry all the way down there might have been a pain in the ass. Now, the other one that we have, this one is when they started adding a little bit of peat to the whiskies, is this Jura Superstition. And again, this is the name because they believe that they have a lot of superstition, and one of them is the reason why they honor this one in particular. They have the symbol on the top of the bottle that is a Khan symbol from an Egyptian god of fortune, and they believe that every time that you put a drum on this will give you good fortune. Now the other one that they do is the Juara Prophecy. The prophecy says that around the 1900s there was an old man that prophesied that one of the last gamble to leave the island was going to be with one blind eye and riding a white horse. And when actually after the Second World War in around 1948, the last gamble actually had a war injury, so no eye, and then he, because of the war, he fell under hardship, so he actually left the island on a white horse. So apparently the prophecy was fulfilled. This is a heavily peated whiskey, got released in 2010, and it's 46% alcohol. It's actually delicious whiskey. It's one of my favorite Juras. And then after that, we got 3 new releases that they started releasing, I think, a couple of years ago, which is they're going to, like a lot of distilleries that they did like 3 or 4 years ago when people were starting to freaking out about whiskey shortage, a lot of, aged whiskey shortage, a lot of distilleries are starting to change their names, and instead of putting an age statement, they started putting just names that reflect the flavors or what the whiskey was made about. For instance, Macallan started doing the sienna, the ruby, and the amber, reflecting the colors of the bottles, and then all sorts of distilleries started changing the names, and instead of putting age statement, they started putting names on it. So this one is just a normal 10 years old. They stuck to the age statement. I'm going to put a few of these ones because they're all over the shop. Then they put they changed the name for, I guess, the Prophecy to the Journey. This is a standard 40% in American oak. And then the last one is the 7 wood. 7 wood, meaning that the age, it doesn't have an age statement, but they aged the whiskey in 7 types of wood. The woods are crazy here because he said, I'm going to read them out loud because I couldn't even pronounce them properly. So besides the white oak, they have Limousin, which is French oak. Then you got Choncaise, Allier, Voges, Tupelis, and Les Dentrades barrels. All different types of wines from France and so on. This is quite delicious as well. And what we're going to try today, I'm going to make some space so you can see. We're going to try the Juara Prophecy. So as I said, the interesting fact about Jura in itself is the fact that it has most of them, all the whiskies have one general back palate that is just honey. Honey and heather is very, very popular. It's a very common flavor on Jura. And they produce a very, very unique whiskey. The master distiller says that Jura is quite a tough young spirit and needs at least 14 years to age in a barrel before it starts maturation in sherry casks and so on. That means that probably the original make, the new make spirit could be quite rough, and I understand that because the island is in the middle of nowhere and it takes a lot of effort to get there. So as I said, 46, heavily peated. I'm not sure what the ppm, but it smells probably like 25-30%, 30 ppm. And yeah, you get that heathery, super honey nose, like what he says on the tasting notes. And then yeah, you get that saltiness because obviously being an island, tiny island in the middle of the ocean, you can't avoid all the salt. So it's like almost salted caramel as well. It's a beautiful, delicate whiskey as well. Okay, so hopefully you enjoy. Slan Jabbar, and we'll see you next time.